Well, YouTubers, it's my Gore time, my giveaway time draw. First of all, housework. I'm smoking my sea urchin pipe, and this time I've got Shortcut to Mushrooms in it. When I've got my there we are. Just to prove it, Shortcut to Mushrooms. Beautiful. Excuse me a moment. There were 25 people in the draw, but some asked to do it and pass the prize on, and a couple sort of said they didn't want a prize, but there are the names. I hope I've got everybody. As soon as I was told somebody had put up a video, I went and put it on the sheet. I'm going to get Carol in to do the draw, but I'll put the pipe tree is one, goes in. Pipe miner. Piper Downs. Oops. Sasquatch Piper 2. The Running Pipe. Ben the Bagpiper. The Zombie Nation. Pegleg Piper. Marshall Allen Bailey. Ronin Piper. Hot Wings 326. Waves of Java. Ghost Cob. UB Piper. Crosby's Corner. Merciful Andrea Andveri. Pipes and Tobacco. Hector Ray. Just a moment. lunch break piper. Now, for some reason, I put Crosby's Corner down twice, so there's only 24. Luke of the Cave, Dwarven Piper, Pipes and Kayaks, Bean Piper, Babyface Huey, and last but by no means least, Scotch and Pipes. Before I draw, I want to say thank you to all of you who put in videos. I know how much they cost some of you, and I shall explain afterwards a little bit about why I'd asked that kind of question. Some of you talked about the good times, and that was really nice. Some of you shared the very hard times, and we shared them with you. And some chose the middle way. Were careful what they chose, and I think that was right as well, because I didn't want anybody to do any harm to themselves or stir up things that you couldn't handle. I'm going to ask Carolyn if she'll come and do the draw. Sorry about that, love, but
It's okay. You just want me to pick one of these?
Yeah. Have you got one?
Yep.
Right. Now I've got to try and undo it. I've squeezed them up, sort of. Right. Oh, Marshall Allen Bailey. So, Marshall, if you could send me your address to my email or in some way through a message, I'd be very grateful. And what you've won is 6 Bentley tobacco flavours and varieties of blends. Bentley's is named after the car, the English big, rather like a Rolls Royce. I don't know whether the tobacco's going out of production because everybody seems to be out of them or saying discontinued, but I managed to get the 6 blends that I wanted. So if you could let me know, I'll send them over to you and pray that they get there. Right. After I'd put up the question, and some of you had begun to answer, I wondered whether I'd done the right thing, because it was a hell of a thing to ask people to do. And the way you joined in and the way you opened your heart and your souls was just amazing. I wanted to see what other people would choose and what they'd put, because so often when some of the terrible things happen, as happened to people who have posted, we sometimes feel that we're very alone, that it's only happened to us. And yet when you look at the videos, you see that we've all in some way shared those good times and the really hard times. And I just want to share my good time and my bad time. You know, of course it was good when I married Carolyn, and when we got to sorry, the dogs have just gone mad. And when I got to the honeymoon place in Stein Mrs. Waters, you know, well, I knew somebody had changed their name. But the really incredible moment was the birth of my children, particularly the birth of my first daughter, Michaela. Michaela was born. I'd been on a double shift, and then I'd had to stay on for another shift. That's 24 hours I was awake working in the paper mill. And then Carolyn went into labour. And we shot off to the hospital at Leeds, Carolyn's dad taking her, I think. I might be wrong, because one of them went in an ambulance. But anyway, I was called out. You know, I arrived, and Michaela was born, a little thing with jet black hair. And I couldn't believe that I was a father. And after being with Carolyn for a while, I made my way to go home for some sleep, really. And on the way home, there was a church called St. George's in Leeds. It's actually called, most people know St. George's Crypt, where they take in anybody, down and outs, anybody in trouble. They all know St. George's Crypt. But I went into the church and I was so full of thankfulness and just couldn't think or believe it. You know, that miracle of birth, that miracle of life was there, that I'd partaken in it. And I laid on the floor of the church in a crucifix position. Nobody else was in the church. It was quite dark. And I just poured out my thanks to God. Got up, went home. I think I probably had something to eat, but I don't know. And I fell asleep. To be woken at, I don't know what time it was. But the father-in-law was banging on the window, trying to wake me up. He'd banged on the doors, and he'd eventually borrowed a ladder and climbed up to the bedroom window. And even then he had trouble waking me because I'd been awake so long working, and then with Carolyn and the things that were going on. And I went to open the window and he said, "For God's sake, don't open the window," you know, and went down the ladder, and I got up, got dressed, went to the door, and he said, "You've got to go to the hospital. They've sent for you." And I got to the hospital and was met by a nurse, and she said, "What do you want to call your little girl? Do you want her baptised?" And at that time we didn't believe in baptism. The church we went to didn't baptise my little ones, so I said, "No, we don't want her baptised." And she said, "Well, I'm sorry to tell you that we're afraid that you might lose your daughter and you might lose your wife." and I think I was taken down to see Rebecca first. I'm not sure. Sorry, love? Michaela, sorry. God, that's terrible, isn't it? Michaela Jane. I think I was taken down to see Michaela first. And she was there, all wired up, and your stomach just drops, your heart drops, everything drops, and you can't speak, you can't think, you can't understand. And then I was taken to see Carolyn, and she was on a bed at the far end of the ward. There was a single light burning, and the nurse sat by her bed, and she was really ill with preeclampsia, and all the toxins had built up. And sorry, that was the worst moment of my life. Michaela was bad enough, but not Carolyn. I couldn't have lived without Carolyn, I thought. And I went down and sat there, and I think we talked, and I'm not sure, but eventually one of the doctors came in, the surgeon and that kind of thing, and they said they thought that Michaela had a hole in the heart, and would I give permission for them to operate? And I said yes. So they took Michaela away from Leeds to another hospital in Leeds. And I remember Carolyn, by this time, had been moved to a private room with me, and we were there. And various people kept putting their heads around the door, either to say hello, or I think they just came to look at this incredibly young-looking couple. And the news had got round the hospital that, this was a difficult one. I remember the young doctor coming back from Killingbeck, and I don't think he knew what to do or say. He was only, I don't know how long he'd been a doctor. But it seemed to me he just opened the door and said, "She died," and then turned around and went out. I don't know whether that's true. In one way, I can't believe it, but it seemed like it. And we sat there and we looked at each other. Whatever he'd said, we didn't understand what had happened, I don't think. And in the end, I went to see the sister and sort of said, "Sister, I'm not sure what's happened." And she said, "What do you mean? Didn't the doctor tell you?" I said, "Well, he stuck his head round the door and said she died." And I think it was the sister who explained to us that they thought she had a hole in the heart and the operation killed her. She didn't have a hole in the heart. I felt that I'd murdered her, and I did feel that for years, which is, not true. But we just tried to survive. They put Carolyn in a private room next to the nursery, so you can imagine what that was for her. She could hear all the babies and knew that Michaela had died. Then I had to go and get a death certificate, a cause of death. And I had to go down to where they'd done the post-mortem. There'd been some kind of mix-up, I think, some kind of hold-up. It wasn't given us, so they said, go down and collect it. And they rang the place up and said, somebody's coming down to collect the certificate. And I walked in and said what I'd come for. And the girl, I think she rang through somewhere, and suddenly I was confronted by the man who did the post-mortems. But he was dressed in rubbers. He'd taken his gloves off, but there were some kind of liquid on his rubbers, his boots, that kind of thing. Sorry, I need to take a puff on my pipe to make it look as if I'm just smoking a bit here. He had the leaflet in his hand, and his face just went white. And he said to me, "Oh my God, you're the father, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sorry to trouble you. You know what it's like, you become embarrassed, it's all your fault." And he explained that he wasn't doing anything to Michaela, all that had been done, and she'd been gently sort of taken to the mortuary and, trying to sort of say, don't worry about what you're looking at. And I got the leaflet. Then I had to register the death. And I spelt her name wrong. It was a form of Michaela, but it wasn't what Carolyn was expecting, or anybody else. You can't believe what that did to me. It was the final insult I'd played on her. But life had to go on, and we got drunk every weekend, trying to understand what had happened. People were telling us all sorts of godless shite, including, God's taken Michaela so you can go to Bible college. And I thought, well, stuff that. One man said, God didn't heal her because of your sins, because of the life you led before you met Carolyn, which he knew about. Other people just didn't know what to say, so they didn't speak at all. They crossed the road. Friends that we knew, and it was a bad time until we went to a Pentecostal church. I don't know why we went there. It wasn't in our local area. And the minister could see that we were upset during the service, and after the service, he asked us what was wrong. And we told him. And he didn't try to answer any questions. He burst into tears, put his arms round us, and said, "If I can cry for your daughter, don't you think God can?" And he helped us to see that there was no reason why. It was as one film that I watched, the father at one point in the film says, "It's life, son. It's bloody life. And it's bloody hard." But we came through. And so I just wanted to see how many of us there were out there who had come to that point where we said, or we might not have said it, but it's life, son. It's life. And it's bloody hard. But you know, it's also bloody wonderful. The joys of life, the good things of life, and even the memories heal. They never go away, but they heal. And I'm sorry I've gone on far too long. But if Marshall can get in touch with me, I'll gladly send him his dues across the pond to the States. They'll probably be sent across as tea or something like that. But I hope they make it. And thank you all for what you shared and for what it cost you.